Welcome, everyone, to the Politics of Survival. Thank you and welcome back. Every Monday night, 7 o'clock, you can find us here Pacific time. But tonight, it's 9 o'clock Pacific time because we're speaking to someone really special tonight. He's a British journalist. He's independent. He is on the ground. He's done so much work in different countries, covering conflicts and calling out governments for their warmongering. And the military-industrial complex seems to have us all worldwide in a stranglehold. And tonight, Johnny Miller is in the Donbass region of Ukraine live, and he's here to give us an update. Welcome, Johnny. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Tara. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You know, we were talking pre-show here about different levels of censorship in different countries. But first, let's talk about what's going on with you. When did you get there, and what's happening?
Yeah, so I've been reporting from Donbass for most of the last 6 months. I was in Kiev briefly in April when the Russians had surrounded it, but I left there and then I came to Donbass. And it's crazy. It's a very underreported story here. It's quite quiet at the moment, which is strange. But most of the time I've been here, you've got constant Ukrainian shelling of civilian areas. In the center of town, there's no military targets, or very hard to see any military targets. And the Ukrainians bomb bus shelters, markets. 2 of my apartments have been hit. Last time I was here a month ago, it's terrifying just leaving the house. You have to make a decision. You know, do I need that from the shop over the road? Is it too dangerous to go out? Some days I could chase the incoming. It lands in a street with no damage. Sometimes it's a bus station with bodies lying in the street, or a youth center with a 24-year-old woman lying dead on the pavement. And it's just an incredibly underreported story, and it's an important story. And of course, this has been going on for 8 years. This war in Ukraine is at its root is a civil war between Ukrainian nationalists who took power in Kiev in 2014 and its pro-Russian population, which is largely in the south and the east. And that's when the civil war started. This war is also an attempt by Russia to secure, as it sees its geostrategic security, particularly Crimea, and it's also an attempt by NATO to damage Russian power. But this is why this is such an important story of Ukraine bombing its own people. They've been doing it since 2014. It's fascinating. There has been some honest reporting on that. If you go on YouTube, you can see a fantastic report by CNN in 2014. And she's saying exactly the same as I've just said now, in that Ukraine is just bombing and shelling the people here. And that's why the people here in Donbass no longer want to be part of Ukraine. And so it's such an important story because it shows that there is a peace to be had in Ukraine, and it's not just all Russia's fault. And there is a peace to be had rather than just sending weapons to Ukraine. If we listen to the civilians here in Donetsk, they clearly no longer want to be part of Ukraine. You know, I go to the funerals of children, a 6-year-old girl killed by Ukrainian shelling, and going to a funeral of a child killed in war. It's a real tragedy. And speaking to the mother of that child, I went back to interview a few months later, and I asked her, you know, did you vote in the recent referendum to join Russia? And she said, yes, I voted to join Russia because they've been killing us for 8 years. So it's an important story, and there's almost no mainstream reporters here. Well, there's no mainstream reporters here. So that's why I'm here and trying my best to tell that story.
I'm glad you are. You know, I've been following your work for a long time. You and I have communicated, and I just think the world of you. I think that you bring a lot of integrity to the world of journalism, which has lost a lot of integrity. You know, basically in the West, we're seeing stenographers rather than actual investigative journalists or war correspondents or any kind of journalism, actually. And the fact that you say there's no Western journalists there says everything, because they want a certain narrative. And if they were there, boots on the ground, they would have to report what they're seeing. Reeve, could you put up the clip with Johnny? I think it's the one in front of the store, but either one. And we're going to play this, Johnny, real quick, and then you can kind of fill in after. It's like a few seconds.
Just arrived back in Donetsk, and about 8:30 this morning there was a massive strike near the center of the city. You can see the damage here. It was a pharmacy and a market, also on the second floor, furniture shop. Casualties are not yet known, but All morning we've heard the whistle of missiles and the anti-air defense working in the skies above the city. But this is the reality for people living in Donetsk. Any time the Ukrainian army could strike with one of these attacks. And this is a civilian area, civilian targets, no military targets around here.
So for the audience, that was Johnny just arriving. So Johnny, could you fill in the blanks a little bit about the aftermath, how many casualties there were and what happened with that?
Yeah, that's when I arrived back just about a week ago now. So the local authorities say 3 people killed in that strike. But as I said, it has been much quieter now. I mean, and that was a big strike, a major strike. But normally here, last month and for most of the last 6 months, it's just constant shelling of the center. So it's just part of the daily life. And almost every day, civilians killed on the street or in their apartments or in shops. And it's just that almost kind of trickle of civilian casualties that's just part of daily life here. And I said it has quietened down the last couple of weeks since I've been back. I suspect because of the major fighting around in the north of Donbass and around the city. The Russians, of course, mobilized huge forces. So I think the Ukrainians are very much concerned with the Russian soldiers now rather than just terror bombing Donetsk. Yesterday, I was out on the outskirts of the city with some humanitarian aid workers where there's constant artillery duels. We saw one strike which landed about 30 meters away from our vehicle as we were driving. We then saw Russian units, artillery unit, race out from the site of that incoming, and we stopped, and 2 Russian soldiers were loaded into our van, wounded, and we rushed them to hospital. We got there, one of the soldiers was very badly wounded, so that was a successful Ukrainian strike on a Russian artillery unit. But around those outskirts, there's a huge amount of civilians as well. And in the center of Donetsk, I said, now it's quite quiet. On the outskirts, I mean, it's crazy. You go there and you think, why are people still living here with the constant boom of the artillery, houses being hit? And right now on the outskirts of Donetsk and in the north of Donbass, it's hell, particularly for the soldiers there, as war, it's one of those fierce fighting we're seeing so far. And so much of that isn't being reported as well, but dozens, if not hundreds of soldiers, particularly Ukrainian soldiers with the overwhelming Russian artillery, are dying every day in Donbass at the moment.
Well, you know, in my other life during the day, I'm a producer for the Kim Iverson show, and I really appreciated your appearance on there. And when I reached out to you, and you can find Kim's show at 3 p.m. live every day Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on Rumble.